Zoom with Czarny. I'm Dustin Czarny, Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County. Today's Friday, May 31st, and my Zoom with Czarny guest this week is Ian Phillips. He's running for Assembly District 126. He's a great candidate, former teacher, union representative, school board member, now running for Assembly District 126, which is the district to the southwest portion of our county that goes into Cayuga County. It was a great conversation, and I hope you stay tuned for that. Obviously, yesterday there was some big news, and I'm only going to touch on it briefly today. But former President Donald Trump was convicted of 34 counts of business fraud, which was in result of a campaign finance violation. Obviously, I talked about this when he was charged, that I felt that this was a charge that was worthy of bringing because it was a political charge. It wasn't, and what I mean by that is the crime was in the context of having a campaign violation that affected the outcome of an election. And I think that it was worthy to bring. I was always a little bit more bullish on the case than a lot of other people, and I felt that this is justice served. Now there will be sentencing July 8th, 11th, and the number one question I've gotten is does he lose his right to vote in Florida? And I've in the hours since the conviction, I've seen some really small number of takes on this on Twitter. I talked to a couple of my friends that are election administrators in Florida, and they believe he does, because in Florida, you're a felon at the time of conviction. But the question is, in New York, you're actually still allowed to vote if you're a felon, if you're not incarcerated. So, there's question about whether he would still have to lose his right in Florida, since he doesn't lose his right in New York, where the charge was brought. It's an interesting legal question. I don't have an answer for you, but maybe I will by the end of the weekend. So hopefully, I'm going to be doing some research on this, and we will do a Zoom and Czarny on this next week, kind of getting into it a little bit. But the news is still fresh, but I didn't want to not acknowledge it. So that's all I got. Please stay tuned for my interview with Ian Phillips, a Democrat running for Assembly District 126, the southwestern portion of Onondaga County, going into Cayuga County and Auburn. Enjoy. And we're back. And I'm really happy to have my good friend Ian Phillips on. Ian and I have known each other for quite some time, and he is running to represent Assembly District 126. This is the southwestern portion of Onondaga County into Cayuga County, into Auburn, the only state legislative district that is represented by a Republican in Onondaga County. So, Ian, thank you so much for coming on Zoom with Czarny.
Thank you so much for having me, Dustin. Long time fan, first time guest. So
yes,
happy to be here.
So, Ian, I know you well. I consider you a good friend, but the viewers, listeners may not know you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so I would say, I'm born and raised in Auburn, so just outside of Onondaga County. After college, I went away for about 10 years in total, and spent some time as an organizer, a community organizer in Philadelphia, and then as a public school teacher in Detroit public schools. But Betsy DeVos was in charge of the schools when I was a teacher in Detroit, and really was kind of doing some pretty terrible things. And so that led me back out of the classroom, a profession that I really loved and felt like I was making an impact in. And I got a call from a friend who was working on the Dan Maffei campaign at the time. And he said, we're trying to mount a campaign. This was 2012 to get better representation and get pro public school people elected to Congress. And that was something that was compelling to me, both because it was representing my home area and because I cared about the issues. So moved back, didn't go into my next year of teaching. Very hard to leave uh, those kids, but did it right before the school year started, so that I wasn't leaving mid-year like happens so often to those students. Came back here, worked on that campaign, worked for Dan Maffei, and got to do some really impactful things for my community as part of that. Even though Dan Maffei was in the minority, we were able to get grants for firefighters so that firefighters weren't going to be laid off in my hometown. We were able to finally get the Harriet Tubman home made into a national park. So that was way back in 2013 that happened. Dan, of course, lost in 2014. And since then, I've been working for New York State United Teachers, working with educators to fight for better learning conditions for students and better working conditions for educators.
So you move back, a story that I think a lot of people tell in Central New York, right? You go away for a little while, then you move back, and because you miss the area. But you're obviously very involved in your union. You're very involved in education. Why run for public office? I know you're already a school board member, so you've already done this already. But why this next step? What about this year and this district is calling to you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. There's definitely days where I continue to ask myself this. I mean, it's definitely not something that if you would have asked me even 2 years ago, 4 years ago, I really felt compelled to do. I've always been pretty comfortable being the person behind the scenes, helping a friend or somebody who I felt had great leadership qualities get elected, but it really came down to the issues. Since I've been on the school board, I'm the school board president in Auburn. I've been the school board president for 3 years, and I've been on the school board for 6. Auburn has been in the bottom 1% of per pupil spending in the state for about 20 years. And we've gone to the Capitol to get, our fair share, and we've brought students up there. And unfortunately, John Lamond, as the current assembly person, just really wasn't interested. He's just not listening. And even if he was listening, it doesn't seem like he has the ability to get anything done. He's not focused on the right issues, right? We have very important challenges facing this district. I'll focus first on education. We have a chronic absenteeism problem that started before COVID, but has really been exacerbated by COVID. Nationally, about a third of students are chronically absent. That means they're missing more than 10% of their days in the classroom. That affects everything from their ability to read, to get jobs, to qualify for colleges. And in the midst of COVID, John Lamondes is introducing a bill to ban critical race theory, which is not anything that is taught in any public school in New York State. It's just kind of these weird dog whistly conspiracy theory things that are designed to distract people from the actual challenges that they face. Um, and I just saw that so many times, and directly to my students who are advocating for themselves. He just seems disinterested in dealing with their actual concerns. And I believe that our communities deserve better representation. I guess why me? I think, I do have a background that connects me with so many people across this district through my position with the teachers union, working to improve the working conditions and learning conditions in our schools across this district. So I've met so many educators through that. I also come from a huge family. I have 7 aunts and uncles on both my dad's side and my mom's side. Most of them live in this district. As I started to look at the strange lines that were drawn, I realized that I had an aunt or an uncle or a cousin in almost every single town in this district that sprawls from Lysander to Fabius Pompey to Auburn and Cato and Weedsport. So, I felt like I was a good fit, and I felt like I could, give this district, which is, been held by a Republican in various versions since really the 80s, or even late 70s. um, give it a go and get some representation for reasonable people who want to get things done.
This district is actually near to my heart because I went to Skaneateles high school. I also went to Cato High School. I don't think
There you go.
but so this district that in SD 48, it's like it's like my childhood. So
Mhm. It's a beautiful district.
it
So
is.
there's two places. Wonderful.
And
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in Auburn being a Skaneateles kid back in the 90s without internet and transportation, no Ubers back then. So closest place I could go. Um, it's a great district, but it's seen as generally a Republican district, right? I mean, or at least in the registration.
Mhm.
Obviously, you're a Democrat, proud union person. What is your plan to win over some of the non-Democrats in the district? What are you hoping to do this year that will, change your fortune as opposed to the people who've run in this district before?
Well, you got a wonky audience, Dustin. So I'll get a little bit wonky for a second. You got the weekly
I
wonk
like,
over
yeah,
your shoulder.
I love the walk. I love the walk.
So I actually sometimes send them the link to the weekly wonk you did on this district a couple of years ago.
Well, there's a
But
new one coming up uh,
oh,
next week.
stay tuned,
So
everyone.
stay
Good,
tuned. Yeah.
good plug. So I'll say, just for the number's sake, start there, right? Biden won this district by 2%. There are more registered Republicans than Democrats, but Biden did win the district 4 years ago. So we'll start there. The next part is, I didn't mention this as part of my bio, but I was the Cayuga County Democratic Chair for 7 years. I stepped down about 3 years ago now when I became school board president so that I could focus on that role. Um, through my time as county chair, I really prided myself on recruiting candidates who wanted to get things done. And we were able to, repeatedly win the majority of the legislative seats in the county, including in districts that are much more Republican and conservative leaning than this assembly district is. So I think the formula of meeting people where they're at, talking about issues that they care about, and focusing on results rather than rhetoric is, I've seen it work in these communities. I've seen it work in places like Port Byron, which is represented by a Democrat today. Places like Senate and Owasco, just outside of Skaneateles, which, Aileen McNabb Coleman won in a landslide. And these are all places that are within this district. And, I know that we can put together a campaign that gets out of the kind of weird partisan nonsense and conspiracy theory and talks about real kitchen table issues and how to improve our lives so that people's kids and grandkids can live and work and raise a family here.
It is it's an interesting district because people think of Cayuga County as this Republican bastion, but you actually have control of the county legislature. In this district, it's Auburn, which is obviously the Democratic portion of Cayuga County, but some of these other portions, and actually the Cayuga County portion of this district is more Democratic than the Onondaga County portion of this district, or at least it was 2 years ago. stay
Mhm.
tuned for 2 weeks from now when we'll find out now. But that being said, uh, you know, what we didn't really talk about yet is what I like to think about is what a majority member of the assembly can bring to a district as opposed to a minority member. And look, the hard cold facts are New York State Assembly is Democratic. It's going to stay Democratic. There's no, real um change on the horizon for there. It's not particularly close. They're veto proof majorities.
Mhm.
And majority members the Democrats tend to have the power in Albany. Is there a benefit to the district to having somebody in the majority versus the minority?
Yeah, the short answer to that is obviously yes.
Yeah, it was a little
Um,
softball, but that's okay.
I think, I've been doing these meet and greets in people's homes, really informal, people inviting their neighbors, regardless of what party they are. And what I've said to folks who've said, listen, I'm a Republican. I don't agree with a lot of the things that maybe the Democrats are doing and the priorities. And I said, well, I'm not going to agree with you on everything. Um, but I'm going to represent this district and I'm going to be in the room where decisions are being made. Uh, my opponent, at least a half a dozen times during budget season, literally takes a picture outside of his office window saying, oh no, the budget's late again. It's your job to go and represent us and deliver a budget that is impactful for Central New Yorkers. And he's not even in the room where any decisions are being made or discussed. And he hasn't built any relationships with the majority party to get, priorities that they might agree with him on done. So by the simple fact of me being in the majority, I'm able to get resources brought back into the district that wouldn't otherwise happen, right? Right now, we are reliant on Senator May and before her, Senator Mannion, to deliver resources, to get things done, to protect our lakes, to get resources for our school districts, to get infrastructure built out so that when Micron comes in, we have the infrastructure in place to set up, whether it's housing or probably more important to most people, like those secondary industries, get them built up. But if we don't have somebody in the majority, we're not going to be able to get the funds for municipalities to build out appropriate infrastructure.
I'm,
So there's a whole host of reasons. I could go on and on and on.
No, but I am going to dial in on one issue because being from that region and covering this for a while, you mentioned the lakes and the watershed and water issues in this district are more pronounced than just about any. You have Skinny Atlas Lake, which provides drinking water to city of Syracuse as well as Skinny Atlas, but is in Owasco Lake and a ton of other bodies of water inside of this particular district is kind of the gateway to the Finger Lakes a little bit. What are the environmental issues of the district and how do you plan to address those?
I mean, the big one on watershed issues is harmful algal blooms. Sometimes they're referred to as HABs, that are popping up more and more in lakes that have a reputation for being a little bit more, nutrient heavy, right? For lack of a better word, kind of runoff heavy. And lakes that were presumed to be extremely clean, like Skinny Atlas is starting to have these harmful algal blooms too, right? I think scientists are a little bit still unclear on all of the causes. I'm a believer in climate change. My opponent is not, but what they do know is nutrient load on our lakes causes more harmful algal blooms. So that's different, fertilizers and chemicals that are being spread on their land, treatment of water, both kind of coming out of your septic systems and sewers, but also kind of how are we protecting the water that goes into our drinking sources? Skinny Atlas is famously like not really filtered, chemically or otherwise, and has always been kind of clean and brought up to Syracuse. And that probably won't remain the case for much longer if we don't do something to kind of look after that resource. And we talk about it in terms of drinking water, and talk about it in wanting clean water to recreate on. But the more and more you talk to people in industry, this is our greatest kind of resource economically, is access to fresh drinking water. So this isn't kind of like a lovey-dovey pie in the sky, let's keep water clean. If we want to have a strong economy, it is reliant on keeping our fresh water clean as well. So it's important for so many reasons, and we really have to be, as this representative of Three Finger Lakes, a huge area of watershed that is a drinking water for over 100,000 people. It's important that somebody who is dialed into this and in the majority is representing this district.
So, we're getting kind of close to that ending point of the podcast. People don't want to hear, they want to hear you. They don't want to hear me.
Right.
So, I like to end on the question of what haven't we talked about? So this is kind of the floor is yours. You can tell us a little bit more about yourself, your dog, whatever you want to talk about. But what do you want to leave the viewers, voters with at the end of this podcast?
I think, what I want to say, just generally speaking, is I'm an optimist. Parties aside, I'm an optimist, and what I mean by that is we've got some real big challenges that face us in Central New York, but I really believe in our ability to find solutions if we work together. What we have in the current representative, and in so many representatives, both at the local level and national level, is a tendency to scapegoat one group or another, or to manufacture issues, right? As a school board member, I dealt with people trying to ban books, right, in the run up to the last election, and then mysteriously that disappeared for most people. Manufacturing issues that don't affect your daily lives. What we really need to do is dial in, find some common ground on protecting our lakes, providing a strong economy for Central New York, funding our schools, getting the resources in place so kids come to school and are learning to read and succeed and have fulfilling lives. And I believe if we kind of put our heads together, there's a lot of reasonable people in Central New York that want to get things done. I do have a dog, since you mentioned the dog. I have an 18-year-old adopted dog, Dashin Beagle. He's
Wow,
deaf. He's
18.
deaf
That's
now and
amazing. Yeah.
semi-blind, but he's hanging in there, Roscoe. And you know,
Wow.
I think the other thing that I want to put in a plug-in for is, my website is ianforcny.com, ianforcny.com. Winning these elections is more than what, me telling my ideas. The thing that I've learned about working and getting folks elected is it really takes some deliberate effort by a group of people. And if you want to be part of flipping this district, and learning to talk to your neighbors and breaking some of the partisan deadlock that exists in our country, there isn't a better place to do it than in the 126th Assembly District. So hop on that website, sign up for the email list, sign up to volunteer, chip in a couple bucks if you can, and really kind of join this, because while I might be the candidate, it's really about all of us.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes, your website. Ian, it's not said often, but thank you for running, putting your name forward. It's really hard to run for office. People think that, you know, it's all parties and people in back rooms, but putting your name forward, especially in a district that is, you know, not a guaranteed win. And, you know, I think it's a district that can flip, but it's not a guaranteed win. And, you know, it's hard to find candidates that are willing to do that. So thank you, Ian, for putting your name forward, and good luck on the campaign trail today.
Well, thank you, Dustin. And, you know, assembly races don't get a lot of coverage. So you putting together this forum is really, you're doing a service to the entire district.
Well, I hope we'll be talking again next year with your 1 year update of how everything came together. So good luck, Ian. Go find him. You know, Democratic candidate for Assembly 126. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks so much, Dustin.
And that was my interview with Ian Phillips, Democrat running for Assembly District 126. Please take a look at him in the show notes. Follow his campaign. He's a worthy candidate, and I hope that you'll be consider blessing him with your vote if you are in that area of Assembly District 126. Next week, Commissioner Carr on Tuesday. We'll be talking about obviously the Trump verdict, but also, you know, getting into the June elections, both the June primary and the June village elections coming up. So we'll be focusing on that now that we'll be in the month of June in my commissioner in the car, and what the difference is between the village election and the primary election. My Zoom with Czarny next week will focus on Donald Trump. I'll be talking to Steve Williams, who's a partner at Smith Stovak, a good friend of mine, a great attorney, former congressional candidate, and we're going to talk about what this means. We're going to get into the verdict. We're going to get into what we can see next between now and the July 11th sentencing, what kind of penalties that we could see, and a whole host of other things. So my Zoom is already will be with Steve Williams, an area attorney and an expert, and I believe someone who will shed a lot of light on the subject. My weekly walk last weekend was the town of Lysander, and coming up this weekend, I'll be doing the village of Liverpool. They will be having a referendum on June 19th about switching your village elections there from June to November. So check it out on the weekly walk. I'll, as always, go to dustinsarny.com, and if you have any questions, but also you can subscribe for free. I never pay for, I never have advertising. I never make anybody pay. It's all paid for out of my pocket. It's just a service that I provide to, as part of my education outreach for Onondaga County. So check it out. Thank you very much and enjoy your day.